Any of this sound familiar? Shame, guilt, law, penance, sin, control, denial, indulgence, judgment. Do you want to guess what our topic is today? No, it's not religion. On today's show, we are deconstructing diet culture. I'm Josh Harris, and you're listening to Clear and Loud, a podcast about the ideas, stories, and voices that are shaping our world. Today, my guest is Registered Holistic Nutritionist and board-certified health coach Erin Power. Erin helps people achieve an effortless relationship with food. Doesn't that sound good? She is a 30-year veteran health, fitness, and nutrition professional, and that experience has convinced her that the whole health and nutrition world has gotten it wrong. For 4 generations and counting, we've been dieting, exercising, and generally micromanaging our bodies, and it's not working. This conversation really blew my mind. Whether or not you diet yourself, we all live in a world that is shaped by diet culture. I think you're going to want to listen to this conversation. You describe your work as helping people connect to the wisdom of their bodies. What does that mean?
The way I approach the body, so we're going to come at this from the perspective of health and probably nutrition, and probably we'll dance around weight loss because that is the space that I do play in. But just to zoom back out to the body and the wisdom of it, we are actually gifted this amazing technology, the most elegant technology we'll ever receive. Elon Musk, eat your heart out. At conception, truly, like we are given this miracle of technology. So our bodies are programmed to tell us, to ask us for everything it can possibly need to keep functioning at a perfectly optimal level. All things being equal, we have to acknowledge that some folks are born with some issues and defects that suggest their body wouldn't work perfectly. But for the most part, out of the box, most of us, our body is wise, it knows what it needs, but we spend our lives either ignoring or micromanaging it.
And so getting back to the wisdom of it and connecting with it means starting with believing that it actually can be trusted, that it actually knows what's best.
I love that. Believing is a great place to start. Do we believe that we can trust this thing to tell us what it needs? I always tell my clients to listen, trust, and respect. So just listen, listen to what the body's asking for. Trust that it is asking for that for a very, very good reason, and give your body the respect of simply just providing the necessary input. A really good example is thirst. Here's a good example. This is why this is a good example is because the nutrition and fitness and health industry have really taught us to micromanage hydration. But you have a perfect, elegant thirst signal in your mouth. The body cues up these signals in the place in the body where it makes sense. So thirst is cued up in your mouth to say, hey, buddy, go get some, when you get a second, go get some water. Okay, you're just a little thirsty. So we get the thirst signal, we go drink a glass of water, voila. But what have we been told? We've been told that by the time you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated. That doesn't even make sense. Like,
I feel so much guilt around not drinking enough water. I feel constant guilt.
I know. You probably have an app or something, one of those giant gallon jugs people are carrying around to drown ourselves. So we've been taught to micromanage hydration. You need to drink 8 to 10 glasses of water. But then you think about like your guilt for not drinking enough. So we double down. We drink. I got to drink more water. Every client I ever work with is apologetic about not drinking enough water. It's like, you're fine. When you feel thirsty, drink water. There, I've just absolved your guilt. But when we overhydrate in a manner of speaking, if we just start to take control and micromanage this, the body's like, all right, I don't know. Well, this person's just drinking all day long. The body just kind of kicks back, and almost some of the hydration mechanisms in the body go dormant. So people who do overhydrate or overemphasize hydration, they walk around feeling very thirsty all the time. because they've kind of broken or like down regulated their thirst mechanism, which was perfect out of the box. If we just listened to it and answered it, we wouldn't be in this mess. So that's a really benign example of ways that we've chosen to override our body's elegant signaling.
What I find so interesting about this, I come from a religious background, and I have much respect and appreciation for the different religious traditions of the world. But what I find interesting is the commonality between what you're describing in this lack of connection to the wisdom of the body and a similar thing that can happen in religion, where you're taught to distrust all of your desires, distrust your heart, and so on, which leaves you very vulnerable to whoever the authority is that's coming into saying, since you can't trust yourself, you need to trust me. And so that's why we have cults. That's why we have all kinds of damaging things that take place in the religious space. Because if people are disconnected from the wisdom of their bodies, then they're completely, at the mercy of who's the authority. If I don't trust my own body, then I got to trust, this diet fad or this authority.
And you end up being at the mercy of this multi-trillion-dollar health, fitness, nutrition, and weight loss industry. It is a monster, and they're waiting to catch you, right? So this is another reason. There's another reason to come back to your body, because you can extract yourself from that, and that's what I love to do with people. And I can say that I'm close to having extracted myself from that, and this goes into my origin story a little bit, which I'll keep pretty high level. But for all of my life, I've been very good. I'm a very good girl. I eat right. I exercise. I'm not lazy. I was very obsessed with fitness from a pretty young age. I played sports in high school, and then there's a lot of disordered eating and body dysmorphia involved there. That's a rabbit hole. Left high school, got to university sports. When that dries up, inevitably, then you get into fitness. So I was into fitness very heavily. Nutrition comes along for the ride. The point is, I was doing everything right. I was eating right and exercising. I was eating my bodybuilder meals, my chicken breasts and my steamed broccoli 8 times a day, just like doubling down on Tupperware, and exercising all the time. And I got fat. I got tired. I got sick. I was in my early 30s. I'm young. I'm trying to work my way up the corporate ladder in my professional career, and I can't focus. I have no energy. I have no mental clarity. I am checked out of life. And I'm not a kid that's going home and drinking big gulps, and like I'm not damaging.
You did everything right. You followed all the rules, right?
Yeah. And then it just stopped working. So I went to my doctor, and she diagnosed me pre-diabetic, which is sort of like, you're not quite diabetic, but if you play your cards right, hey. And it's sort of this subclinical diabetes. And we don't have to know too much about diabetes. I didn't know anything about diabetes. Now I know a lot about it. But it's basically ends up being a metabolic breakdown. Your body's kind of forgotten how to use fuel. And in a manner of speaking, we can probably go into that a little bit more and explain it better. But in a manner of speaking, diabetes is the body has sort of forgotten how to adequately use fuel inside the cells. So that explains why I was super tired. I was in your bones tired. I couldn't drive anywhere without falling asleep behind the wheel. I couldn't go into a meeting. If the meeting was after noon, forget it. I was sleeping at the boardroom table. Like you don't advance in your career doing stuff like that. But the thing was, how does somebody like me become pre-diabetic? That doesn't even track. You think about diabetic people like sedentary and overweight, and I wasn't, but I became tired and overweight. I followed all the rules, and it backfired. So then I started questioning the rules. Who made these rules? Wait, where did these rules come from? What? And so then I went back and I went back in sort of using an evolutionary lens, which may or may not be a comfortable topic for some people, but I wanted to understand like how my great grandparents ate and moved and lived. Do you know what I mean? Like that familial evolution, because they weren't overweight. There was no prevalence of these chronic diseases that are so, which diabetes is one of them. So I was seeking to understand how does the human body use fuel? Because mine isn't working. How is it designed to work out of the box? So I set out to learn. I set out to learn human metabolic biochemistry. Just, a little side project, just learning about how the body uses fuel, and figured it out and made these changes and got better. And there's a lot of things that went into it. There's nutrition stuff, there's movement stuff, there was lifestyle stuff, essentially deprogramming everything I've been told to do. And I had everything that I had been doing obediently for my whole life.
This podcast is sponsored by the creative agency Clear and Loud. Whatever your business's product, service, or idea, we believe clarity changes everything. We help you clarify your strategy, your brand messaging, and your online content so that you reach the right audience and grow your business. If you're frustrated by an ineffective website, if your message is jumbled and confusing, and you're not getting the traction you want with your marketing, let's talk. Schedule a free 30-minute consultation by visiting clearandloud.com. That idea of diet culture deprogramming is really interesting to me. And even that language of diet culture, what do you mean by culture when you say there's like a culture that's grown up around that? And what is it that you're trying to deprogram?
Oh man, this is a can of worms. And I want to preface this.
Open the can.
I do want to preface this by saying I'm not a leading authority on this particular diet culture topic. I'm toe dipping into it now. So I'm 12 years into my journey where I changed my diet, and now I'm really second guessing and questioning, and I'm angry and frustrated about diet culture. So I'm starting to learn, where did this come from? There's thought leaders in this space that I'm learning from, but I can unpack it a little bit. Diet culture, its origin is in a cultural beauty standard. And I feel like I can only speak to this from the perspective of women, unfortunately. I maybe it'd be worth exploring it from the perspective of men, or however we identify. But from the perspective of women, currently, our beauty ideal is to shrink, to be small,
right?
Small, thin, right? Yet also kind of curvy would be great. And, glutes are really trendy right now. But the culture beauty ideal is it's a very precise body shape and size. And that's ubiquitous. That's everywhere. And we all live, at least in Western sort of modern developed nations, we live in a diet culture. You don't have to be a dieter. You don't have to be dieting to be in diet culture. Diet culture is the thing that says you need to fit into this physical shape. And by the way, here's how you do it. And by the way, there's a multi-trillion-dollar industry ready to help you micromanage the hell out of this. So diet culture comes from a cultural beauty ideal of thinness and smallness. So I would say most people of a certain generation, well, anybody who's alive in the world today, their mom's dieted and their grandma's probably dieted, and who knows how far back that goes. It probably, I'm of the opinion we're about 4 generations deep in dieting at this point. So that includes
where that beauty standard is out there in force, and then that's shaping this idea of get smaller.
Yes, at any cost. Like I've never known anything different until I intentionally extricated myself from it. And by the way, that's hard. There's no way. I don't believe I'll ever be fully, recovered, if you will. Always be in recovery from diet culture. We're bathed in it generationally.
Are there specific things where you're like, if there's 1 or 2 things that I could deprogram, get out of people's brains, this would be the thing that I'd like to change?
Oh man, 1 or 2 things. Okay, so first of all, I've already touched on this idea of micromanagement. That our bodies are too dumb to know what they need. And so we have to, square peg round hole these health behaviors and diet behaviors and exercise behaviors into our lives at any cost, often to the detriment of joy and pleasure. That life is supposed to be this hardcore pursuit of excellence at all times. And I'm over that. I could not be more over it. I think I'm probably, there's a book called Atomic Habits. Have you heard of it? Everyone loves this book.
Yeah.
Yeah. People love this book. I hate this book. I'm the only person in history of the world that hates this book.
You want to blow up Atomic Habits, huh?
too. I
What do you
wouldn't
what do you
mind.
hate about it? What is it about it that you think is unhelpful?
It's habit change for disciplined people.
Mm,
So the theory is habit stacking. So when I close my laptop, I will do 5 push-ups. No, 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 I'm not doing that. I don't want to. This idea that if we're not disciplined, that we're lazy or we're weak. If we're not hustling, then we're
yeah.
sitting still. I'm so over that. Well, I actually believe that we're programmed for rest. This idea of scheduling in rest to me is so upside
Mm,
down. We're not meant to schedule in rest. We're meant to rest and then
mm,
schedule in effort. We're
wow.
upside down as far as I'm concerned. So micromanagement, hustle culture, I'm done with hustling, grinding, this punishment sort of mental, punitive kind of,
Hmm.
I ate bad, so now I need to go for a run, or I didn't do my run yesterday, so now I can't eat. It's so sad to me. It's heartbreaking, actually. And it
Mm,
comes from this place of distrust and not trusting the wisdom of the body. But that's not anyone's fault. That's not your fault. It's your programming, 4 generations at least of
right.
it.
How did you pull yourself out of that? Like, realistically, what are ways to detach from that way of thinking and being?
I went through this journey 12 or 13 years ago, and the world was very different, even
Mm.
12 or 13 years ago. Think about it in terms of what you're exposed to. Your idea of like removing yourself from the world was actually easier to do back then. In a manner
Because
of
you didn't have
speaking,
social media in the same way and those kinds of influences. Is that what you mean?
yes,
Mm.
yes. So, so I can reflect back to my journey, which was for me, I was just angry. And my anger was my rock bottom. I was like, F this. I did it by the
Mm.
book. I did it by the book. So the book's wrong. And I'm done following the book. And for me, it was just the anger, frustration. I was pissed off. I think it would be harder to do it now because as soon as you open your phone, you're going to be bombarded with images of the cultural beauty standard. So, I mean, I try to tell my clients, for example, like, oh, here's how you set up your Instagram feed, for example, to have fewer babes or whatever, whatever the triggering image is. But it only works for a certain period of time because I don't know, algorithms.
Right.
Before your eyeballs are assaulted with the culture beauty standard again. So to answer your question, my origin is frustration. The people who come to work with me are frustrated,
Hmm.
but they're not rock bottom frustrated yet. A lot of the folks that come to work with me, they want out of diet culture. They want to learn how to trust their bodies and how to just eat. How do you just eat?
Right.
I don't even know how to eat anymore.
Yeah.
But they also get pulled back pretty easily into diet culture. So it's a fight. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie.
I think about things from a marketing perspective, the idea of how ideas spread, how we, protect ourselves from negative ideas and pursue change in different ways. Those kinds of ideas are fascinating. And so here we are, we're talking about health and nutrition, but we're actually talking about these much larger cultural narratives, like ideas that shape us, the scripts that have been given to us about self-denial and those kinds of things. You use the phrase temperate hedonism, which I think is really, really fascinating, which kind of flies in the face of that idea that to be good when it comes
Mhm.
to food is constantly denying yourself, feeling guilty over any kind of pleasure and so on. So what is temperate hedonism and how does that fit into your philosophy as a health coach?
I came to the idea of temperate hedonism over time. So it started with hedonism. It started with a belief that humans are driven by the pursuit of pleasure. Um,
Mhm.
and so if you think about this from the perspective of dieting or this diet culture, then we are white knuckling it
Mhm.
through life. Like that is the definition of willpower. Is just like ignoring your cravings for pleasure. That's the definition of it, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not very nice. That's impolite. I mean, if your body is a pleasure-driven meat suit, then why, what good is it? Like, how does that even make sense from a taking care of yourself perspective to be in constant battle with this natural urge?
Mhm.
But I evolved it to
Mhm.
temperate hedonism over time because just using the blanket of like hedonism, pleasure, if it feels good, do it, which is like my life motto actually, um, is from the perspective of survival, unsafe. We can't just be following pleasures, or who knows where we'd be. Like, nothing would be getting done if we were just in pleasure all the time. So temperate pleasure, because at the end of the day, we still have to survive. We still have to produce. We still have to be effective. Right. So it's sort of like we dip in and out of hedonism. And the idea of temperance is sort of in the same family as moderation. In the sense of like, yeah, of course you can have a glass of wine. Of course you're going to have a glass of wine. Of course you're going to eat pizza. Of course you're going to have birthday cake. Yeah, of course. Like, and you can. And these things are not black and white. So there's a lot of black and whiteness in dieting world. Like, you're good or you're bad. You're on or you're off. You're on the wagon, off the wagon. Right. No, there's this temperance. Like, we can opt in and out, and we're just fluidly making food choices with, information. Like, I know, for example, that popcorn isn't great for me, Erin, because my gut reacts badly to corn. And I ran that experiment, and I learned that about myself. But boy, I love popcorn. I really love popcorn, and I'm going to eat popcorn, and I'm going to do it knowing that I'm probably going to have gut rot for 2 days. And it's like, that's fine. I'm opting into it. Sometimes I opt out of it. There's just a real an effortlessness and easiness with making decisions from a place of information, opting in or out of things. So, and this is the temperance piece. I'm really, really fighting back against the black and whiteness. I mentioned wine earlier because I love wine. I love everything about the ritual of wine. I love buying it. I love opening it. I love smelling it. I like finding new ones. That glass of wine at the end of the day is one of my rituals. But there are people who will say alcohol is toxic. It will stall your fat loss goals. And you're a low vibe loser if you indulge in it. Cannabis is the new wine. I don't know. Anyway. And it's like, no, it's just simply not that black and white. A glass of wine that's indulged in as a ritual of love and joy and pleasure at the end of the day is very different than binge drinking to blackout. Right. Like, why do we live in this very black and white world?
Yeah.
So that's the temperate hedonism.
I love that. I guess I just want to push that question back to you, is like, why do we love the black and white and those extremes? I mean, I'm just thinking about myself, and I think this is a flaw in my own life, that it's easier for me to take an extreme stance and hold that than to live in the daily, decision making of, it's okay to eat the popcorn this time, or it's okay to grab a bag of Sour Patch Kids. That's my issue, Sour Patch Kids. But do you know what I mean? Like I'm just thinking about myself. In the month of February, I said no sugar. So I like made this rule, and that was easier for me to then maintain this kind of, again, micromanaging focus on health, quote unquote. But then I just reached this point where I'm like, oh, screw it. I can't do this anymore, And then I'm living on the other end of the spectrum, kind of waiting until I hit that point where I look in the mirror one day and I'm like, oh no, I've got to do something about this. So it's like, how do you get out of that? It's like an addiction to the black and white thinking.
Well, I think that one thing that you mentioned is spot on, which is that it feels easier. It's easier for me if I'm just abstaining from a thing, for example.
Right.
But it's not, though. It's easier when you're successfully doing it. And then the second that you're not, now I'm a failure. Now I'm in the shame spiral.
That's
I'm
true.
A loser. I can't stick to anything. Do you know how many times I have conversations with people who say their biggest barrier is myself? I self-sabotage. I just can't be trusted. I'm just a loser. I can never stick to anything. Like, this is an identity crisis. People believe that they are unworthy because they didn't stick to the thing 100% perfectly. It's like, that doesn't seem like it is working. It doesn't actually seem like it is easy. It only works if you're working it. You know what I mean? It only works when it's working. And then as soon as it's not working, you're just spiraling.
It's so true.
Like a 30-day sugar detox. Cool. What happened on day 31, right? Like, I mean, what happens on day 31? Do we never, I don't know. Do we never eat it again? Do we eat less? Do we eat the same amount we were eating before? If so, what was the point of doing that? I don't think there's a lot of long-term outcomes for black and white, apart from some very specific outliers. And these are the people that you see influencing you in your social feeds. The people who, like like Jocko Willink, who gets up at 4:30 in the morning every day, and he's hardcore, and that's his whole brand, is being hardcore. He can do it. He's an outlier, and if we see Jocko Willink posting his watch on Twitter at 4:30 in the morning, like, get out of bed, you lazy loser, basically, which is the message behind that particular tweet. It's like, yeah, I am kind of
Right.
a loser. I'll never be as hardcore as Chuck. But like, those are
Right.
outliers that we think the outlier, hardcore, very disciplined people are who we have to be. Like, it took me a long
Yeah.
time to realize I don't like being disciplined. I was very self-disciplined when I was young, doing my fitness, nutrition, and everything I was doing perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
I fatigued out of it. I don't want to be disciplined anymore. First of all, it didn't pay
Mm.
off. Secondly, it was no fun. And I don't think that's who I am. And I don't think that's who anybody is apart from those outliers. So let's just call a spade a spade. You're not good at
Oh,
black and
it's so
white. So let's
helpful.
get into that gray zone.
What does the normal process look like for someone that gets this kind of one-on-one coaching with you? They reach out to you. How often are you meeting with them? What's the typical process look like?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing is they have to be curious about what I'm talking about. So they've been following on Instagram is typically my social media platform of choice, where I'm not a frequent poster, but when I do post, it's usually pretty impassioned. Like, and so they get a
I
sense
love
that,
it.
right, like, they get a sense of the know, like, and trust piece, right? I like what
Mm.
Erin's saying. This makes sense. She's rung a few bells for me. Then we have a discovery process where they get on the phone. We get on the phone together, and I just want to know if I have the solution to their problem. Because if I don't, then
Mm.
we're not going to engage.
Right.
And this is important for the client, obviously, but it's also very important for me too. I actually have to get a sense, is this person ready to stop dieting? Or
Mm.
are they coming to me and saying, I really want to stop dieting and I'd love to lose 30 pounds? It's like,
Right.
which one of those is more important to you? With no
Mm.
judgment, which one of those is more important to you? Right? I think it's possible for me to help somebody lose 30 pounds, but not in 8 weeks, maybe not even in two
Mm-hmm.
years. Like, I'm just
Mm.
not going to put that on the front burner. It's not interesting to me anymore.
Mm.
And so I feel for people who want to work with me to get off the diet roller coaster, but they're still programmed to also want to lose weight. And if it could be gone by summer, that would be great. And it's like, yeah, so I have to get that sense, like, are you really ready for this? And the other thing
Mm.
too, after decades and a lifetime spent dieting, your whole metabolism is downregulated. Metabolism gets a little bit messed up. Your fueling system is very bewildered and confused. And so we have to bring the system back online before anything can happen. And sometimes we gain weight because your
Mm.
metabolism's been over leveraged for so long. You've been restricting calories for your whole life. I'm asking you to eat again and make food choices again
Wow.
and enjoy food again. And you might gain weight, and that's uncomfortable for people. So discovery is very crucial because you have to be in the right frame of mind to do this kind of work, because it's just not a diet. It's not a diet. It's not really a program. It's a relationship. From there, once we have a go ahead, it's a good fit. There's a very deep intake process. I want to understand goals. Like, what are your big goals and why are they
Mm.
important to you? And like, what is your vision for this? Like, let's imagine it's 10 years down the line and you have achieved an effortless relationship with food. What is life like? Can you even envision it? Which is actually really
Wow.
hard for people to do.
They need to have
Um,
that sense of here's what the future could look like.
yeah. I mean, it's an imagination exercise, a thought experiment. And those are hard for people, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you've been stuck in diet culture your whole life. You just almost can't know what it would look like on the other side. It's very hard. It's even hard for me to articulate to people.
Mm.
You know, so we do spend 8 weeks together. 8 weeks is sort of my flagship length of time because, again, there's this metabolic healing foundation that's inherent there, and that takes only about 3 weeks. But the good news is that your metabolism is very elastic. It's, again, because
Mm.
we're programmed for food situations that vary, scarcity, abundance, scarcity, abundance. So our metabolism is designed to be pretty elastic. We've been
Mm-hmm.
in scarcity for decades of life dieting, but don't worry, your body knows how to handle abundance as well. It will all level itself out. It just takes about 3 weeks if you play your cards right to get this going. And when people's metabolisms are back online, they start to feel energetic again. They start to feel clarity of mind again. They have their full faculties available to them.
Mm.
Also hunger and cravings show up differently. So the foods that they were powerless to before,
Mm.
they can coexist with them. It's like, I'm not in panic mode anymore. Like, I'm not in this starvation-y scarcity mode. So I can coexist with this bread bowl or this bag of Oreos. It's like, it's not a big deal, right? So then the subsequent 5 weeks of our time together is spent trying to fail. And I say try to fail, and that's not the right word, but it's getting into the gray, right?
Yeah.
So I want you to screw up, and then we're going to talk about everything about that. Like, what was the food you chose? Why are you calling it a screw up?
That is so good.
Yeah, like
Wow.
explore every moment of it. I went to the restaurant and I had the creme brulee. I was like, tell me about it. Like, how did it feel when you ordered it? Tell me how it felt the first bite. How was the second bite? How was the 15th bite? How did you feel afterwards? Was it joy or was it shame, disappointment or happiness? Like, we have to just kind of get into the experience of food a little bit. And in doing that, we get to relinquish some of the control, or we get to take maybe some of the control back, I guess, is more the right way to say it.
I love that you take that time to allow for and process whatever you want to call that failure, quote unquote, because that's real life. It's like if you just get quick results and then you don't have the kind of perspective that can handle living in the gray, it's not going to be long lasting. So I think that's just such a powerful perspective. Erin, you are sharing such an important message. The world needs it. I love the way that you think about these things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Clear and Loud podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Our producer is Pam Cameron, and this episode contains music by Jeremy Yaddo at Music for Podcasts. If you like what you hear, give us a boost by subscribing or leaving a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen. We'd also love your feedback on today's episode. Or if you have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode or a guest you'd like us to consider, email us at hello@clearandloud.com. You can also shoot us a direct message on Instagram. Our handle is @clearandloud. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.